WRVA. My name is Rich Herrera. Appreciate you spending time with us this morning. Wow, it's so amazing. It really is. The King of England spoke before Congress, and he mentioned that one of his ancestors was King George. And here he is in America celebrating 250 years as our celebration of our semi-quincentennial begins and starts to really heat up, especially this part of the country. But I just thought it was very interesting. Who would have thought that King George's ancestors would be here celebrating 250 years later? And he had mentioned all that we had been through, all of our ties, and how important the relationship is between. And are we cousins? Are we brothers? Are we nephews? Are we what are we in a relationship with England? So every week as we lead up to July 4th, 2026, I think it's important that we look back and remember what made this country what it is today. I sincerely believe that if we are to continue to be this great experiment, we have to lean into the wisdom of our founding fathers and remember that history, because you know that old saying, those that fail to remember history are doomed to repeat it. So we bring in Dr. Murray Sabrin. He joins us every week as we talk about our semi-quincentennial, and he's our guest this morning here on News Radio WRVA. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Rich. Great to be with you again.
Thank you so much. You know, May 4th, 1776, Rhode Island renounces the king. Rhode Island had become the first colony to officially renounce its allegiance to King George III, making a significant legal step towards independence. How wild is that when Rhode Island did it, it was such a breakaway. It was so radical to tell King George to go kick rocks. And now you've got King Charles standing there being applauded by the members of the House and Senate. Go back and just talk to me about the courage that it took the Rhode Islanders to say no more to the crown of England.
Well, it's not surprising that Rhode Island was the first state to renounce allegiance to the crown, because there's a backstory as to why this happened in May of 1776. Because in November of 1775, the General Assembly of Rhode Island decreed that there'd be death and forfeit of property for anyone assisting the British Army, which is a stunning decree, to say the least. And one of the reasons that Rhode Island was so gung-ho for the revolution is that the British imposed a draconian plunder of Newport, which is the port of Rhode Island. And it was so draconian that there was starvation, and women and children had to leave the city, and the city was depopulated by half because of the terrible conditions that the British imposed on the people of Newport. And so you have all the confluence of these acts by the British against the colonists. And the colonists said, we can't take it anymore. We want to continue this breakaway from Britain. And unfortunately, Britain decided to try to maintain its empire. And there's a lesson for all of us today about big government trying to control and rule nations and colonies around the world.
And the lesson of that is sometimes the tighter you hold on, the more they slip through your fingers. My son always likes to remind me that one of the most one of the biggest holidays around the world is Independence Day from the British Crown, that the United States started, and it's been repeated over and over and over and over and over again for all of its colonists throughout the world. What do you think, King George? What do you think the Rhode Islanders would say that you have a white tie state dinner honoring the King of England as he comes in and sees where his great, I think it's 5 generations back.
Yeah.
The former British subjects are now the most powerful nation in the world.
Well, yeah, look at the recent history. We were allies with Russia and other countries, China.
China, World War II.
Yeah, and look what happened. China became a communist nation, and we had a Cold War with the Soviet Union. While our enemies, adversaries, Germany and Japan, are now our allies. So again, history runs in these crazy cycles that people are trying to scratch their heads and say, why are our friends becoming our enemies, and why are our enemies becoming our allies? And this is the way geopolitics has worked for centuries. And I think the American people and people around the world are really getting tired of all these conflicts that take place, not between the people themselves, but the political leaders who have an agenda, and they use their military on occasion to put that agenda into place. And so this is, I think, a quandary that we're facing around the world, is that rather than people engaging in natural commerce, which is basically what human beings have done for millennia.
Go back to the Phoenicians, right?
Yeah, I mean, trade is the lifeblood of civilization. Think of what it would be like if people in Virginia and where I live in Florida couldn't trade with the rest of the states or the rest of the parts of the world. We would be living at the subsistence level. So one of the great benefits of trade, which the British really imposed some draconian measures on the colonists, and you got to remember what the standard of living was back then. People were just eking out a standard of living. So anytime you have an imposition by the government, it's going to reduce your standard of living possibly below the subsistence level. And so we're not in that situation today. But the point is, we're paying so much in taxes, we're paying so much for regulations, and of course, we're paying blood and treasure for conflicts around the world.
How when Rhode Island broke away from the crown, how big of a risk was it for the Rhode Islanders?
It was a huge risk because the British were bombarding Newport, and there was talk that this could be the end of the Revolutionary War. But fortunately, General Washington sent in General Lee, and he boosted the morale of the people in Rhode Island, and they were able to thwart the British stranglehold on Newport. And so this is where leadership comes in. Yeah, whether it's in basketball, baseball, and other corporations, but especially when it comes to military conflicts, you've got to have strong leaders who can boost the morale of the young men that were fighting this and dying and getting maimed. And so they were able to rally the troops, so to speak, and thwart the British advance.
Well, it's interesting because, again, you look at the northernmost part of the colonies, the 13 breakaway. When that happened, when there's Rhode Island, and then there's the Virginia colony, all the colonies we have. When did they start thinking of themselves separate than all the rest of the British colonies? Because and I didn't learn this in history books, I learned this by reading, that when the Continental Congress got together and they called for a gathering, they invited all of the Commonwealths, all of the British colonies to come together. The only ones who showed up were the 13 that became America. There were others in the Caribbean, others in other parts of the world that didn't come together with them.
Well, yeah, this was the challenge. I think the mindset back then was, listen, we're doing the heavy lifting here, going against the British Crown. So why don't you join us, and we can have a united front against the British? But I guess the people in those areas, whether it's Canada or the Caribbean, decided let's leave things alone because we don't really want to fight the British because they are the greatest empire on the planet. And so this was a process that took place over several years, and eventually all the colonists got together in that famous meeting in Philadelphia to write the Declaration of Independence, which then people rallied around that, and eventually with starts and fists, it eventually led to the creation of the United States of America.
What were the reaction from the Caribbean states and the Caribbean colonies and the ones in Canada when they saw the U.S. break away? Did they look at us like traitors the same way that the royal subjects in England did?
That's a good question. I'm not that familiar with the way they looked at it in the aggregate, but I'm sure there were people who secretly said, hey, this is a great idea. And maybe some of them even joined the colonists in fighting the British. But the point is, take up arms against the greatest empire the world had ever seen up to that point was a daunting challenge. And you don't do this on a willy-nilly basis. You have to really decide what are the costs, what are the benefits. The cost, of course, would be death and destruction to your home, your property, or confiscation of your property, imprisonment or hanging. And so people had to really be circumspect to what they were going to do when the colonists decided they were going to revolt. So again, I think the evidence is clear that no one joined, because Benjamin Franklin went up to Canada in 1776 about this time, and he wasn't able to rally the Canadians to the colonist cause.
See, that again, so interesting. I think wasn't it Franklin who said, we all have to hang together or we'll surely hang apart?
Absolutely. And this was This was one of the most incredible events in human history, because who would think that 13 colonists with very little military training and very little supplies would go against the British Empire? And of course, the French came in because Britain and France were adversaries, and so they helped the Americans as well. But again, this is a lesson that unfortunately American policymakers haven't learned, especially Vietnam, when the Vietnamese wanted to be free of the Chinese, the French, and then the Americans, and we were bogged down for 10 years there.
Dr. Murray Sabrin joins us every week here on News Radio WRVA, just leaning back into those founding fathers. And just think about this. Had they not been successful, imagine where George Washington would have ended up, and Ben Franklin probably would have been hung, and Thomas Jefferson. We would not be celebrating 250 years. We would not know what Mount Vernon was. Monticello would have been burnt to the ground. It's so interesting how the terms of history and the twists and turns put us where we are today. And I think it's good that we remember this as we get ready to celebrate America 250. Doctor, I will talk to you next week. Thank you so much.
Great to be with you. Have a good week.
All right, take care. Dr. Murray Sabrin joins us every week as we reflect back and get ready for the celebration of USA 250. Today's program